Tonight on NewsWatch, the spreading civil war, how fighting in Syria is spilling over into neighboring countries. Plus, the president meets the Pope. A look ahead at Thursday's meeting between the head of the Catholic Church and the head of the country. And hear why new standards for public schools have all these parents up in arms. All this and more tonight on NewsWatch. Syria's civil war is expanding. Good evening. I'm Mark Martin. When the Syrian uprising turned into a civil war in 2011, most of the trouble stayed inside Syria's borders, but that's changing. The conflict is now spread beyond the borders into Turkey, Lebanon, and Israel. Chris Mitchell has tonight's top story from Jerusalem.
This week, more than 3 years after Syria's civil war broke out, armored personnel carriers rushed to prevent fighting between supporters and opponents of Syrian President Bashar Assad. But not in Syria, in Beirut, Lebanon, a sign the war has spread well beyond Syria's borders. Here's another sign. Turkish Prime Minister Erdogan at an election rally last Sunday. He's praising the Turkish Air Force for shooting down a Syrian plane after it violated Turkey's airspace.
If you violate our border, our slap will be hard. Therefore, I congratulate first our Chief of General Staff and our pilots.
Also last week, Israeli warplanes struck Syrian military posts in the Golan Heights after a roadside bombing wounded 4 Israeli soldiers. It was some of the worst fighting on Israel's border with Syria in decades. Israel doesn't want a war with Syria, and the Netanyahu government has tried to steer clear of the conflict between Assad and his opposition. But the conflict is expanding anyway.
I think we can already consider now that the Israel-Syria border is back, is a conflict border once again. And what we're going to see, I think, as in common with Israel's other conflict borders, for example, vis-a-vis the Hamas statelet in Gaza, is that we will have periodic rounds of violence in which the Hezbollah or the Assad regime or whoever it is, or perhaps in other sectors of the border, the Sunni jihadis on the rebel side, will try to redress the balance against Israel.
Muslim rebel groups, some backed by al-Qaeda, are gaining ground near the Turkish border. Here they enter a deserted Armenian Christian town. They shout victory from Allah. We shall soon conquer. A short time later, they gained their first foothold on the shores of the Mediterranean. Israel has been treating Syrians injured in fighting. In February, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu visited a field hospital and met with some of the Syrian wounded. He also pointed to Iran as Assad's chief sponsor in the widening war.
Who's supplying these bombs? Who's supplying these weapons? Iran. Who's giving the instructions? Iran. Who's giving the backing for this butchery? Iran. That's the bad. Here's the good. It's right near.
Middle East analyst Jonathan Spire warns an Assad victory in Syria is a victory for Iran.
This would be an immense victory for the Iranians and therefore an immense defeat for the US interest, which sees, or at least ought to see, I'm not quite sure if the US does right now see it this way, but ought to see the Iran-led regional bloc as the most potent and powerful challenge to Western interest and Western allies in the Middle East.
Chris Mitchell, CBN News, Jerusalem.
And as the Syrian civil war spills over, the United States is warning extremists are using the region to set up terrorism training grounds. The director of the CIA says al-Qaeda is trying to recruit those fighting in Syria, but not just for attacks in that country. Director John Brennan recently told a House panel he believes Syria is only a launching pad and that those trained there could eventually attempt to attack America. The U.S. Secretary of State is making another push for peace in the Middle East ahead of an important deadline. Israel and Palestine had set April 30th as a deadline for any peace talk deals. The Palestinians are saying they'll walk away over a prisoner release plan with Israel. Secretary John Kerry is in Jordan today meeting with Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas in hopes of getting past this hurdle. He's also planning to talk with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu in the coming days. President Obama is preparing to meet Pope Francis for the first time. He'll travel to Vatican City Thursday. The two are expected to discuss poverty and inequality around the world. The president's visit comes after some harsh words from the Vatican's Chief Justice. Cardinal Raymond Burke recently told Polonia Christiana magazine Mr. Obama's policies have become progressively hostile toward Christians, saying that the president wants to restrict freedom of religion to inside church doors. He says Mr. Obama seems to be a totally secularized man who aggressively promotes anti-life and anti-family policies. And for more on the president visiting the Pope, we turn now to Ambassador Francis Rooney. He was the U.S. ambassador to the Holy See under President George W. Bush. And he's also author of the book, The Global Vatican. And he joins us now from Washington. Ambassador Rooney, Cardinal Burke voiced what many American Christians feel, which is that the president's policies are hostile toward Christians. Do you agree?
Well, I think that the very secular nature of the Obama administration has tended to try to define religion as something that takes place inside a building and not a major force in people's lives. And that's part of the big debate now about the insurance mandate and its confrontation with the First Amendment.
But do you think that's hostility toward Christians, the policies of the Obama administration?
Well, in the sense that it's certainly hostility towards the people that feel the First Amendment allows their religious beliefs to not have to pay for contraception. So it certainly offends Catholics, if not all Christians.
Okay. Well, the United States has had good diplomatic relations with the Holy See under past presidents. Is that relationship now strained?
Well, I think the relationship has been certainly attenuated, much more relaxed and less influential than the time of George Bush. But I'm hopeful now that with this visit that the Pope will realize the unique leverage that the Holy See's diplomacy offers in the world.
President Obama will be meeting Pope Francis for the first time. What do you hope will come from that?
Well, like I say, I hope that the president realizes that the Holy See's diplomacy, based on the same fundamental principles of human dignity and religious freedom that our country has been based on, offers great leverage to a country like the United States in the global, in resolving conflicts around the world and propelling those values through its diplomacy.
Now, you've said the power and influence of the Holy See is often underestimated. You've talked about that. What exactly do you mean by that? Explain a little bit more for me.
Well, the Holy See is a unique sovereign, lacking territory, lacking a hegemonic agenda, but nonetheless considered a sovereign entity like any secular state. As such, they can deploy a unique form of soft power, the power of influence and persuasion instead of coercion, which I think is sadly needed as an element of conflict resolution today. That's another important weapon in trying to resolve some of the more intractable problems that we see in the world today, many of which are laden with religious and ethnic overtones.
All right, Ambassador Francis Rooney, author of The Global Vatican. Thanks again for your time, sir.
Thank you very much, Mark.
In other news, the IRS says it's going to take years to produce evidence that the agency targeted Tea Party groups. The committee investigating the case has requested thousands of documents, including emails to and from former IRS official Lois Lerner since 2009. During today's Capitol Hill hearing, the IRS chief said his office has provided more than 1 million pages of documents to congressional committees since the investigations began last spring, adding it is taking time because by law the IRS must remove sensitive personal information about taxpayers from any documents they give the oversight panel. Yet another change to the health care law. The administration is extending the enrollment cutoff for those who started the process before the deadline but cannot complete it in time. No word on how long that extension will last. The White House needs to meet its goal of 6 million enrollees in health care exchange markets by March 31st. So far, a little more than 5 million are enrolled. A recent survey shows the healthcare.gov website is slower than most, taking nearly 9 seconds for the home page to load. In comparison, a leading private health insurance website takes about 5 seconds. Workers continue digging through the debris of that mudslide in Washington state. It's been 4 days and the number of those unaccounted for remains at more than 150. So far, 16 bodies have been recovered, and searchers say they found more still trapped in the mud. But continuous rain and fears of a new landslide are slowing down recovery efforts. The National Guard, along with other federal and state teams, are on the ground providing assistance.
We have direct federal assistance. That's a really good thing for us because It essentially says that the federal government can come in and do things unimpeded, without a lot of bureaucracy, and that will help us.
The mudslide ranks as one of the worst in U.S. history. Michigan won't recognize the more than 300 gay marriages that took place last weekend. That announcement today from Governor Rick Snyder. The decision prohibits those couples from gaining benefits that Michigan grants to married people. It's just the latest in the gay marriage debate that's been unfolding in the state since last Friday. That's when a federal judge ruled Michigan's voter-approved ban on gay marriage unconstitutional. A federal appeals court has put a hold on gay weddings while the state appeals that judge's ruling. Coming up, a national election rendered null and void. We'll show you where.
You had a grandpa named Pop, right?
They died when I was your age.
I saw him in heaven.
What if an ordinary boy,
Is this him?
That's Pop.
Your son had a near-death experience.
discovered the answer to life's most extraordinary question?
Do you think my son went to heaven?
He told me everything was all right.
Based on the incredible true story.
We all want to be supportive.
I want to believe him. But everything he talks about is impossible.
Will you believe?
You saw heaven? It's beautiful.
Heaven is for real. See it this Easter. Rated PG.
I was having some pains between my shoulder blades. At that point, everything changed. Diagnosis, pancreatic cancer. First, there was prayer. The second is to fight. As soon as we walked through those doors at Cancer Treatment Centers of America, all my anxiety left. The pastoral care here is based on the Bible, based on the Word of God, just as it is at our own church.
When you combine the great medicine with the spiritual resources we have, it provides the patients with something that really can make a difference.
You got a pastor right there on staff praying with patients, and whether it be scripture or whether it just be a word of encouragement to say, God's got this.
If you or someone you love is fighting complex or advanced stage cancer, go to cancercenter.com/faith. You'll learn how our treatment results compare to national averages and see a list of insurance plans with which we've worked. Advanced medicine and technology, the warm embrace of the Spirit.
I firmly believe God led me here.
Call or go to cancercenter.com. Cancer Treatment Centers of America. Care that never quits. Appointments available now.
You had a grandpa named Pop, right?
They died when I was your age.
I saw him in heaven.
What if an ordinary boy,
Is this him?
That's Pop.
Your son had a near-death experience.
discovered the answer to life's most extraordinary question?
Do you think my son went to heaven?
He told me everything was all right.
Based on the incredible true story.
We all want to be supportive.
I want to believe him. But everything he talks about is impossible.
Will you believe?
You saw heaven? It's beautiful.
Heaven is for real. See it this Easter. Rated PG.
New clues tonight in the search for that missing Malaysia airliner. Satellite images show more than 100 objects in the area where the search is taking place. This week, Malaysia's prime minister announced the plane went down in a remote part of the Indian Ocean, killing all 239 passengers and crew. Loved ones of those on board are still demanding proof of that claim. 6 different countries continue to search an area covering more than 600,000 square miles, roughly the size of Alaska. The Prime Minister of Australia calls it the most inaccessible spot imaginable. A political crisis is rocking Thailand. A court there has thrown out results of the nation's recent general election. Asia correspondent Lucille Toulousan reports the ruling means the country's turmoil will continue.
The Constitutional Court ruling was viewed as a victory for thousands of anti-government protesters. Last February, they blocked candidate registrations and caused the closing of 10% of election day polling stations. Prime Minister Yingluck Shinawatra scheduled the snap vote in a bid to appease angry demonstrators who wanted her out of office. The uprising began after she signed a bill that would have given her brother, former Prime Minister Thaksin, amnesty from corruption charges. A Thai court declared her action illegal. Yingluck's government is still pressing for new elections, but the opposition says they'll boycott and prevent them from happening. They want an unelected People's Council to make reforms before new elections are scheduled. The protesters say they're tired of government corruption. Meanwhile, Yingluck is facing a series of legal challenges that could lead to her removal from office, including negligence charges linked to a rice pledging scheme.
This rice pledging program basically means that the government would pawn your rice stocks above the market price. But this program became disastrous because the government could not find money to pay for individual farmers. And that's why many farmers were crying now. They have not received money for the last 6 months.
And that caused some farmers to protest by camping out in tents in the middle of Bangkok.
We will fight till the end. Anyway, we have nothing to lose because our business is already bankrupt.
A much longer time and more sacrifice may be needed to reform Thailand, but most Thai people are hopeful that the present political crisis can transition to a democracy in its true sense.
And many Thais are now looking to their beloved king to help solve this political stalemate. Lucille Talusan, CBN News, Bangkok.
Up next, growing concern over Common Core, why many are so unhappy with the new education standards.
Hello? Is this thing on? Hey kids, do you love games? And do you love discovering things? Well, do ya?
Then you're gonna love this. It's the new free Superbook Kids Bible app. You can play games, watch videos, find answers to your questions, and a whole lot more. The new Superbook Kids Bible app. Free downloads available on iTunes and Google Play now.
This is a national healthcare alert from the Health Hotline. If you, a family member, or a loved one suffers from knee pain and have Medicare as your primary insurance, we've got great news. You could qualify for a pain-relieving knee brace at little or no cost to you. Get free delivery, and all the paperwork is handled by our accredited suppliers at no charge to you. If you're on Medicare and have knee pain, don't wait. You may qualify to immediately receive a pain-relieving brace at little or no cost. Friendly agents are standing by 24/7 to help you. Call the Health Hotline right now for details toll-free. Our friendly representatives are standing by now to take your call. We also have other pain-relieving braces available for shoulder, ankle, and your back. You may be eligible to receive these items and more at little or no cost to you as well. Call right now for details toll-free.
Operators are standing by. Call 855-740-8143. That's 855-740-8143. Again, 855-740-8143. That's 855-740-8143.
Announcing an important breakthrough in healthcare that can benefit everyone. If you or anyone you love needs affordable health insurance, regardless of a pre-existing medical condition, call Quick Insurance 123 today and get the immediate relief you deserve. Quick Insurance 123 was created to provide affordable health insurance to all uninsured Americans, with or without pre-existing conditions. This is not a discount card. This is a real insurance program that lets you choose from many affordable health plans, with access to doctors, hospitals, emergency services, and more. So call the number on your screen now and get the health coverage you need just for calling. As a special bonus, we'll send you a free prescription savings card that could save you up to 85% on your prescriptions. That's right, you could save up to 85% on your prescriptions just for calling. Call Quick Insurance 123 to find out how you can get affordable health insurance and receive your free prescription savings card just for calling. Don't wait. Getting a free quote is as easy as 1, 2, 3. Call today.
Welcome back. Opponents of the federal education standard Common Core are celebrating in Indiana. It's the first state to reject the system. Governor Mike Pence calls it a victory for state authority and says Indiana will now write its own standards. In the last several years, 44 states, however, have adopted Common Core, but a growing number of parents and teachers don't like the standards, saying they drive curriculum and take away local control of schools. Heather Sells has the story.
Just a few miles off Long Island's North Shore, Superintendent Joe Rella oversees 3,700 students in the Comstock School District. He initially welcomed the educational effort known as Common Core, but quickly lost his faith.
Pretty early on, it was clear that there wasn't going to be a dialogue on this between districts and the state education department. It was one-way communication, and we began to receive a lot of materials, edicts, scripts.
45 states have adopted the standards. New York and Kentucky became the first to put them to the test. The results, major failure. In New York, less than a third of the students passed. English and math scores dropped 50% from traditional test scores the year before. For Rella, the scores became a literal rallying point as he called on the Comstock community to fight back.
In August, 1,500 parents, teachers, kids gathered from this small community here on this football field to protest just what had happened in their community since Common Core took effect.
Stop it, fix it, or scrap it. All right.
We're asking for, at least in my district, and it's growing around New York, among parents especially, is stop it right now. Examine it.
Parents in at least 20 states agree with the Comstock parents. They're pushing legislation to temporarily block the standards. In Illinois, Congressman Randy Holtgren wants a review.
So many questions are still there that the right thing to do is really follow the lead of Indiana, and their legislature said, let's wait on this.
The story behind Common Core's creation helps explain some of the controversy. Two trade associations, the Council of Chief State School Officers and the National Governors Association, developed the standards and then copyrighted them, making any change impossible. The chief author, David Coleman, is now president of the College Board. His next mission, rewrite the SAT. It's a move that could further cement the Core's influence. Billionaire philanthropist and Microsoft founder Bill Gates is the money behind the program. His foundation has spent more than $160 million to create and promote the standards. Critics dismiss them as elitist.
The people were cut out of the process. They weren't given notice as to what was happening.
Emmett McGroarty calls the Core's creation simply undemocratic, with little public input and no accountability. He also believes giving the federal government such a role in education is unconstitutional. McGroarty is joined by a grassroots, largely mom-led movement across the country. CBN News recently met with a group of parents-turned-activists in New York. Each shares a similar story, discovering the Core and its changes only when their children began to struggle at school with new worksheets and ways of explaining math concepts.
Come January, all of a sudden I noticed that their homework changed a lot. It was very confusing. I didn't understand it.
But it was never publicized, and there were certainly never any public hearings or any discussions among parents about the fact that this was going to be a major, a paradigm shift in how almost everything happens in school.
The challenge now, how to take back control of the classroom when a copyrighted standard dictates so much.
If a parent has a problem with Common Core state standards, I guess they'll call up, Arnie Duncan, maybe?
Duncan, the Secretary of Education, helped to quickly usher in the Core with one big incentive, race to the top funding. He essentially offered more than $4 billion in grants to states that adopted the standards. And many education reformers are backing Duncan. They say the standards raise the bar for all the states and ensure that the next generation will be able to compete globally.
The Common Core standards are designed to be fewer standards at each grade level, to be clearer so that teachers really can understand by looking at them, and parents as well, what children are supposed to be learning, but also to go deeper in specific content areas.
It is much higher critical thinking skills. It demands of young people more writing, more listening, and verbal ability to explain your points of view.
Edelin and other Core supporters also challenge the notion that the Core strips away local control.
It's a set of standards. It's not a curriculum. It doesn't teach you how to teach. It doesn't dictate to anybody what you must teach.
But Joe Rella disagrees. He says the district is already buying materials aligned to the Common Core test to improve student scores.
We can do what we want with it, but our students are still going to be subject to tests based on it.
The big questions: will the standards actually deliver and produce a new competitive generation? And how many states will stay on board? With parents applying pressure and politicians calling for a second look, they may in effect hit a giant pause button.
My hope is that they will be successful and that we'll go back to doing what we were doing successfully before, educating our kids locally.
Reporting in New York, Heather Sells, CBN News.
Along with Indiana, other states are moving to block Common Core. Lawmakers across the country have introduced some 100 bills to halt or slow its implementation. Up next, Heaven is for Real, the new movie that takes a look at one little boy's experience.
This is a national healthcare alert from the Health Hotline. If you, a family member, or a loved one suffers from knee pain and have Medicare as your primary insurance, we've got great news. You could qualify for a pain-relieving knee brace at little or no cost to you. Get free delivery, and all the paperwork is handled by our accredited suppliers at no charge to you. If you're on Medicare and have knee pain, don't wait. You may qualify to immediately receive a pain-relieving brace at little or no cost. Friendly agents are standing by 24/7 to help you. Call the Health Hotline right now for details toll-free. Our friendly representatives are standing by now to take your call. We also have other pain-relieving braces available for shoulder, ankle, and your back. You may be eligible to receive these items and more at little or no cost to you as well. Call right now for details toll-free.
Operators are standing by. Call 855-740-8143. That's 855-740-8143. Again, 855-740-8143. That's 855-740-8143.
Millions of Americans with an ostomy live their lives to the fullest every day. And over the last 10 years, thousands have chosen Liberator Medical as their caring and reliable resource for ostomy supplies. Liberator Medical is a nationally accredited Medicare, Medicaid, and insurance provider, so we can handle all your Medicare, Medicaid, and insurance paperwork and billing. And Liberator Medical has been chosen as a preferred supplier by all the leading ostomy manufacturers, including Coloplast, Hollister, Convatec, and Generics. We supply all these leading ostomy brands, so you can always get the ostomy supplies and accessories you want and trust. And all of our ostomy care specialists are product certified by the manufacturers. Shipping is free and discreetly delivered right to your door. Unhappy with your present ostomy supplier? Call Liberator Medical and ask about our free ostomy sampling program. We also offer catheters and urological supplies.
Call 1-800-513-3076. That's 1-800-513-3076.
Thanks for sticking around. 2014 has been a big year for faith-based films. Several have already become box office hits, and now the highly anticipated Heaven is for Real is getting ready to hit the big screen. The CBN Regent University community was given a private screening. More than 1,000 people showed up to see the film and hear from producers Devin Franklin and Bishop T.D. Jakes.
We found this young kid, Connor Coram, out of Ohio, had never acted a day in his life. The odds of finding a 5-year-old kid to play Colton was not in our favor. But God really sent Connor to us.
This film is a great opportunity to bring in the margin of our community who really doesn't normally talk about faith or the afterlife, and you walk away inspired to believe that all things are possible.
Oh, that's wonderful. Heaven is for Real will be officially released April 16th. Check it out and also go see God's Not Dead, another great movie. Well, that's all for this edition of NewsWatch. Thanks for watching. Have a great night.